Nuestro siguiente escritor es Mariah Jameson.
He told me to beatbox if I felt like crying, so, all right. My brother Isaiah and I had been in the house alone for 3 days without her, and by the third day we finished off all the bread and milk, so we had nothing to eat. My mom often left us alone, and this time it went from a few hours to days. Isaiah looked at me and said, "I'm going to the store to get us some noodles or something. Lock the door behind me and don't let anyone in the house." We had been eating bread with butter and sugar for so long I didn't even realize it would ever run out. Isaiah left out the house and I locked the door. 30 minutes later, he came back from the store with some apples, a couple packs of noodles, and a loaf of bread. All of this he had stuffed in his jacket sleeve. He did this every time my mom left us without enough food. He didn't care or even think to care of the risks he took. He just knew he had to feed us. Since I was so young, only 5 at the time, I didn't realize the severity of the situation, and my brother, who was only 7, was often left as my caretaker, making sure I ate, walking me to school, helping me with homework. My mother's addiction to drugs and money took priority over her children. She had 6 kids, and she wasn't able to take care of any of us. My 2 oldest and youngest siblings were already living with other family members. A few weeks after one of the last times she left us alone for days, we were staying with my aunt and her 2 boys when my brother and I were taken into foster care by a social worker. The ride in the police car from my aunt's house to the county building seemed like an eternity. I was just playing with my Barbies when my brother Isaiah came into the room with my shoes and told me to get up. My Aunt Jennifer was in the living room crying and talking to this lady I didn't know. She was a short, petite, blonde-haired woman who talked really fast, and she kept a big smile on her face. Isaiah had on his backpack, and he told me to put my shoes on, as my aunt informed us we were leaving with this lady, my social worker, Miss Sandoval. I didn't understand, but I didn't ask her anything because at that moment, she started crying hysterically. I looked at Isaiah, desperate for answers, but he quickly looked away. Miss Sandoval walked with us outside my aunt's house to the police car, and we left. Once we got to her office, she walked us to her desk and told us to sit down. She explained to us that we would only be seeing each other on weekends and holidays. I was so confused by what this meant because my brother and I hadn't gone one day that my 5-year-old brain could remember without seeing each other. "We will arrange so that each of your foster parents will meet with you every Saturday so you can spend time together." Foster parents? So this means we aren't going back to Auntie Jennifer's house like she promised. What are foster parents? None of this made any sense to me, and my brother Isaiah hadn't said one word since we got out of the police car. Miss Sandoval said, "You will be going to a home with a new sister, and they have a nice pool, Mariah. Everything will be just fine." But my brother has to go with me, because my mom said we never go anywhere without each other, right, Zay? He looked at me with the saddest eyes I had ever seen, and he immediately started crying. He knew what was happening. We were being separated. "Unfortunately, sweetheart, we can't place you 2 in the same home, but I promise you as soon as there is an opening with a family that is willing to take the both of you, I will make sure you are back together," Miss Sandoval told us. As she got up to go to the cafe for our lunch, my brother grabbed a hold of my hand and he squeezed it firmly. How could this be happening to us? There was no way I was going anywhere without my brother, and nobody was going to tell me any different. "Zay, I'm not going to that lady's house. Let's tell her we'll be good, we'll listen, and we can stay at Auntie's house. I won't fight with my cousin Davion, and he can have my Barbies. I don't even care anymore. He can break all their heads off." But he was so upset, he didn't care about anything I was saying. "Raya, we aren't going back there. Don't you understand? Auntie Jen called that lady. She told her to come get us. We are never going back. You have to promise me that no matter what happens, you stay strong and be good with this family so we can see each other." My eyes filled up with tears so much it was like I was crying buckets of water out of my face. It became flushed. Isaiah pulled his sleeve and wiped my nose with it. "Don't cry, Rai. I'll always be here for you, no matter what. Besides, your nose is getting red like Rudolph." I quickly pushed his hand away and we laughed together. Miss Sandoval came back into her office with 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and 2 juice boxes for us to drink. I drank the juice and gave my sandwich to my brother. I hated peanut butter and jelly. We sat in her office for another hour before she let us know I would be leaving first. I held onto my brother's hand until Miss Sandoval had to separate us. We said our goodbyes, and I got in the car and waved until I could no longer see him. None of this made any sense to me, but I wasn't going to ask this stupid lady any more questions. She took me away from the only person I loved, and I let her. Why didn't I fight her? Why didn't I hold on to my brother and never let go? I had no idea where I was going or who I was going to be living with. Once we arrived at my first foster home, I felt a little relieved. The street where the apartment was located looked so nice, and there were a few kids playing outside. I thought to myself, I'll probably have a new best friend, and we can play Barbies together. I stepped out of the car, and I tried to imagine what this house would be looking like on the inside. Hopefully there's a big TV, so I can watch Rugrats on it. We got to the door and was greeted by a short black woman with a bunch of gold jewelry on. Hi, Mariah. I'm Miss Sam, and this is Chalet, your foster sister. A girl not too much bigger than me looked at me with a huge smile on her face. I didn't say hi or smile back at her. I wasn't there to make friends. I didn't plan on being there that long. As soon as there's a family that will take me and Zay, I'm out of here. That's what Miss Sandoval had told us. There's no need for me to be nice to anyone. I walked around her living room looking at my new home. It smelled like we were in a flower shop because of the candles she had burning. There was a bunch of fake plants and a huge fish tank besides the front door. I like your tank, I told her. Miss Sandoval and Miss Sam went into the kitchen to talk about me and left that big-eyed, cheesy-smiling girl staring at me. You want to see the toys we got for you? Yeah, where are they? I didn't really want to see them, but I did want this girl to stop staring at me. She led me down the hall to what would be our room, which was in between Mrs. Sam's room and the bathroom. There were 2 beds and a dresser with a small TV in the middle of the room. She pulled out a basket from under the bed that would be mine, and it was filled with a bunch of Barbies and baby stuff. This is for you. My birthday is next week, so I'm getting more new toys. So she got you these, so you won't feel so left out. I didn't show it, but I was so happy. The only time I had ever gotten that many toys at once was when we lived in a shelter in downtown called the YWCA. That was the best shelter I remember my mom and my brother and I living in. I pushed the basket back from underneath the bed with my foot and sat on the bed. As happy as I was, I hated this place because my brother wasn't there with me. It's going to be okay, she said as she left the room. But it wasn't going to be okay. I was never going to be okay with any of this. My first visit with my brother was for my 6th birthday. Miss Sandoval picked Isaiah up, and she brought him to Miss Sam's house. Before leaving the house to go to McDonald's, Miss Sam took a picture of my brother and me in front of her big fish tank. I remember my brother couldn't stop smiling like he had a surprise for me. I didn't care what it was. I was just so happy to see him. I felt like I hadn't seen him in so long, even though it had only been a month. We kept looking at each other and smiling like we had some inside joke going on. Isaiah hugged me over and over, grinning the whole time. He told me about the all-boy home he was staying in and how much he missed me. The look in his eyes told me he was sad, but he never let his face show it. When we got to McDonald's, the surprise he had for me was sitting at the table near the play gym. My mom. I hadn't seen her in 2 months. The day the police came and got us from my aunt's house, she had left us there for 2 weeks with no call or anything. I didn't think we would ever see her again. What is she doing here? His smile left his face as soon as he heard the anger in my voice. "She's going to get us back, Rye. We won't be in those homes anymore." He couldn't help but to be optimistic. He believed my mom could do no wrong, and even though I was younger than him, I had grown to not trust anything she said. My mom had always made promises to us that she didn't keep. Miss Sandoval must have known I wasn't too happy about my mom being there. She quickly reassured me that if I wanted her to leave, she would tell my mom's case manager to take her home. "Come on, Rye, just talk to her," my brother begged me. Walking towards my mom felt like I was walking down the longest road ever. Everything in McDonald's froze, and it became silent. My stomach dropped as if I was flying down a large, steep hill at high speeds. My heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I was going to tell my mom how I really felt about her. I was going to tell her how I hated her for leaving us and not coming back. I was going to tell her how mad I was at her because she never kept her pinky promise to always be there when I needed her. I was going to tell her how mad I was that I had to leave my Barbie house with my cousin Davion, and how it was all her fault. And I had to tell her how she was the worst mom ever. Because of her, I didn't have my brother with me anymore. I was going to stand up for myself and my brother, like I always do, because no one had our backs like I did. I was going to tell her all these things until she got up and ran towards me with her arms open wide, scooping my little tiny frame off the ground, all the while crying and saying, "I am so sorry, Rai Rai. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get you back." She never did. My mom would lose all her parental rights to me and my brother 2 years later when a judge determined she was unfit to be a parent. But in that moment, I didn't say any of the things I wanted to tell her. I didn't stand up for myself or my brother that day. Instead, I cried, like the little 6-year-old that I was. I cried to my mommy and I told her how much I missed her.
That was Mariah Jameson, everybody. Let's give a round of applause for her.